Well, thank you very much, and I'd like to begin by thanking our host, the Heartland Institute, for putting on this very important dialogue and giving me an opportunity to speak here today. Folks, I want to accomplish three things. I want to build upon the excellent presentation that Joe did over breakfast and kind of set the stage. I want to talk about what does the America First Energy Plan mean to us. And then I want to do a little bit of a tour de horizon and give you examples of where we're in fact implementing that around the world. So hopefully we can accomplish that in an aggressive or certainly a challenging 15-minute period of time. Folks, the world has changed. We're living in a time of dramatic change in the global energy sector. What I can say is that this picture many of us grew up with, where we envision OPEC countries producing and developed countries, OECD countries consuming. That's been shattered. Today, technology, entrepreneurship, policy, commodity prices have all combined to radically change the U.S. landscape and U.S. oil import dependence. This, in fact, has translated through the shale revolution to change the geography of energy globally. You see, energy sits at this nexus between national security, economic development, and environmental responsibility, as it always has. And we live in a globally interconnected economy, and perhaps the energy markets are one of the best examples of that. Energy shortages, price volatility, and market supply disruptions affect economic growth and output and the price that our consumers pay at the pump or our energy prices here at home. We all remain energy interdependent. So what can we do about that? And how do we see that? You know, we're emerging from a time, 4 decades since the Arab oil embargo of the 70s, where a true zero-sum game mentality predominated our policies, to a time today where we have energy abundance. And not only is it imperative how we and our allies fulfill those things that are represented by the nexus of energy, but also how other countries, some of our adversaries, do the same. The fundamental changes that we're seeing today with the energy abundance, our energy dominance, they create geopolitical stability, our national security, and they foster economic growth. This actually is a good news story for us here at home. And at the Bureau of Energy Resources in the U.S. State Department, where I work, we address those pivotal issues associated with the intersection of energy and foreign policy. Now, I know many of you are interested in hearing a little more about the administration's approach and what it means, the America First Energy Plan, for U.S. industry and our relationships around the world. We really do have an opportunity to think creatively about continuing to work together with our friends, our partners, and our allies to achieve our collective energy and broader economic policy goals. So simply, what are those collective energy and policy goals? And they fall into 3 key tenets. Number 1, removing barriers to energy development and trade. Number 2, promoting U.S. energy exports. This includes resources, this includes technologies, and it includes services. And number 3, ensuring economic and energy security for the U.S. and our allies and partners. These goals are focused on boosting domestic energy production, creating jobs here at home, and streamlining or eliminating certain regulations and restrictions. Before I delve further, let me set the scene by providing some background on global energy landscape of today. Let's look at oil and gas, and let's start here at home. The oil and gas landscape has evolved rapidly over the past decade. I want to roll back the hands of time to 2007. U.S. crude production was at about 5 million barrels today, and our gas production was around 45 billion cubic meters a month. Global natural gas liquefaction, LNG, capacity was around 250 billion cubic meters per year. Yet, the United States at that time, as Joe showed earlier today, was importing LNG. Now, fast forward to where we are today. It's a very different picture. The U.S. is producing crude oil at a rate of about 9.5 million barrels a day, almost to our historic highs of about 9.6 million barrels, and the forecast shows we're going to exceed that next year, that historic high. Gas production is up 40%. Crude production is up 85%. And global LNG capacity has increased 40%. Those are big numbers, big opportunities there. And in large part, this has been due to U.S. shale revolution and the opportunities for LNG and natural gas that we've seen here at home. These trends have culminated in a historic first for the United States. Last year, in February, the United States exported its first shipment of LNG from the Gulf Coast. Since then, 175 cargoes have been exported internationally in a truly global footprint. Exports to more than 20 countries ranging from Central and South America to Asia to Europe. We're exporting to the Middle East too. A lot of folks don't realize that. There are even more U.S. LNG projects on the horizon. As of June of this year, the Department of Energy has authorized 21.3 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas that can be exported to non-free trade agreement countries from facilities that are either under construction or proposed. So let me put it a little differently. This translates to approximately 220 billion cubic meters of LNG. Perhaps said a different way, this equates to about half of the EU's total natural gas consumption, or about the quarter of ours. If you think about it geopolitically, and explained yet another way, it eclipses the amount of gas that Russia exported to the EU. By 2020, the United States will be approaching nearly 100 billion cubic meters in LNG exports. And it's simply amazing to me to think about that in less than a decade. Back in 2010, we were building LNG import terminals. Now, I know I don't need to tell those of you that are here in the room and who have worked in the energy sphere that the oil and gas revolution here in the U.S. is truly having a global impact. But the fundamental redrawing of the global energy landscape through access to U.S. natural resources, along with further supply, and we're becoming one of the big three in LNG, with Australia coming and Qatar, it really is connecting global gas markets like never before. Thankfully, as natural gas markets become increasingly competitive, efficient, properly operating, the world wins. Well-functioning markets reinforce global energy security, foster economic growth and commercial interests abroad, and depending how host countries choose to use it, can in fact enhance environmental stewardship. In short, what's happening here domestically in the U.S. matters, and it's having an incredible impact on the world. Before I talk about and turn to some of the administration's foreign energy policy, I also want to delve into the coal markets. You know, given the 1.2, almost 1.3 billion people in the world today that don't have access to consistent forms of energy, there is no doubt that coal is going to become and remain an integral part of the global energy mix. According to the International Energy Agency's 2016 World Energy Outlook, coal's share of the global primary energy use stands at about 29%. Folks, that is actually up from 23% at the start of the century. Much of this growth has been driven by China and India. And while we expect the percentage of coal used globally in the energy mix to decline over the next 2 decades, folks miss a simple fact. And that simple fact is that in absolute terms, the amount of coal consumption is increasing. Our challenge is how best to position American resources to compete in this global market and to ensure that there's a level playing field abroad for U.S. companies. The ability of U.S. resources to compete on the global stage is driven partly by the logistics and finding cost-effective ways to get the coal to market. However, much like the case of the shale revolution, the United States remains at the forefront of innovation and technology. And when we talk about energy dominance, it's more than just exporting our resources. It's our technology and our services sector and how they compete. And I think this industry is a great example of that. The U.S. produces state-of-the-art equipment for the reduction of SOx and NOx from coal-fired power plants, which could be deployed globally with the right support and opportunity. Further, our research and development is second to none when it comes to clean coal technology. Such technologies will allow coal to remain competitive within a changing global regulatory environment. U.S. businesses, both service and equipment suppliers, can lead the way in this regard. I use one example. It's just around the corner here, and if you have an opportunity, you might read a little bit about it. It's the Petronova project just outside of Houston. It's a 240 megawatt coal-fired power generation plant. And you know what they're doing? They're capturing 90% of the CO2 emission from there. And what are they doing with it? They're using it for enhanced oil recovery so they can actually turn that into a profit stream. And, the simple fact of the matter is they're reducing the emissions by 5,000 tons per day, or an equivalent of over 1 million tons per year. That's an interesting win-win that's there, and it's an opportunity for a business development. U.S. production is steadily increasing, and we've actually seen some growth in coal production here at home. And it's interesting that, again, we sit on 1/4 of the world's endowment of coal, and yet at the same time, our amount of production and exports is de minimis compared to the global scale, as Joe pointed out this morning. So let me take a second and turn to what the administration's foreign energy policy, and it really breaks down into those 3 core tenets: removing trade barriers, promoting energy exports, and ensuring economic and energy security for the U.S. The administration is committed to our national security. The State Department has backed projects that encourage diversification of fuel types, technologies, and supply sources. We highlight U.S. interests throughout those engagements. We continue to invest both our diplomatic capital as well as our technical assistance for countries so that they have access to energy and our energy resources. The United States is a staunch supporter of European energy security, which is crucial for ensuring Europe's role as a forceful partner with the United States in meeting the global challenges, including that of countering Russia's influence. I note the recent deal that was done under which 700,000 tons of U.S. coal are being exported to the Ukraine. This was just recently announced. Looking at the Middle East, the successful exploration, production, and development of the natural resources there can serve as a source of cooperation and/or a source of conflict. But as I mentioned earlier, even there we play a role. We not only play a role through our U.S. interests abroad, but also through some of our energy exports. And actually, we've seen LNG going there. North Korea has emerged as perhaps one of the starkest challenges to this administration. But even here, too, energy plays a crucial role. We work closely with China to get them to stop importing coal from North Korea. And furthermore, just recently, we announced further sanctions through the UN in a unanimous vote that helped to limit both the import of oil and refined products into North Korea. In other parts of Asia, from Singapore to Tokyo, we see opportunities for increased collaboration to enhance regional energy security through a growing supply of U.S. LNG. Our partners in the Asia Pacific view us as a reliable, steady supplier of energy. And in fact, part of energy dominance is you can come to us and we can help you in any of the areas. In Nigeria, we're also supporting the government of Nigeria and their efforts to, one, stop and counter violent extremism, and two, the anti-corruption issues. We work to help IOCs, our IOCs over there, to ensure they get payment for the work that they're doing. And we work with them in terms of countering violent extremism like Boko Haram. And then closer to home here in the Caribbean and in Central America, we're working on things like countering the Petrocaribe or the Venezuelan influence. And there are some clear opportunities for the U.S. and U.S. energy exports to backfill in that regard. So as you can tell, energy security still remains at the forefront. I think there are other areas and other ways we can assist, and I won't go into the detail of it in the interest of time, but happy to talk to you all about it offline. But the key here is how can we help create a level playing field, one that's based on fact and allows our industry to compete. Very simply, I could go through numerous examples in that regard, and I'll only point out one. A lot of you may have noticed the U.S.-China economic dialogue that occurred in May. And in fact, LNG played a substantive role there. But beyond that, we also had to have some very, very hard conversations with our Chinese counterparts. And in fact, stress to them the importance of free market enterprise and efficiently working markets. And that affected, as you know, coal and the coal markets in particular. Again, I have more that I could cover here, but I'd like to quote Secretary Perry when he said, "The United States will continue to be a leader in energy technology, development, and delivery. We will serve as an example to the rest of the world on how to achieve economic, energy, as well as environmental goals simultaneously." To state something that's widely recognized but yet underlooked, the United States does have a competitive advantage in all segments of the energy sector, whether it's our vast natural resources, our expertise in extractions, such as unconventional drilling, or due to the emerging technologies and systems that are turning our power sector upside down. The United States is on the cutting edge, and the administration's all the above and the American Energy First plan includes all areas of energy. And this advantage translates to American jobs and investments in the U.S. infrastructure. So you can expect to see this administration highlight the competitiveness of U.S. energy exports, including coal, and anticipate that we will do everything we can to promote internationally the exceptional skill, expertise, and technology that resides here at home in the U.S. in order to unlock the United States' full economic potential. We expect this administration to continue to focus on enhancing our national security. Regarding our collective energy and broader economic policy goals, we seek to remove barriers to energy development and trade, to promote U.S. energy exports, including resources, technology, and services, and to ensure economic and energy security for the U.S. and our allies. Thank you.